Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me directly through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is an internationally syndicated show solely due to the love and support that you all continue to show. We're available across all major podcast distributors, and like I mentioned, people, if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in because we are delighted to showcase this next guest on our network. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive Dr. Lynn Sereda. Now we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Growing One's Inner Wisdom to the Max. It's available for purchase through a lot of places, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a whole host of others. While you're at it, listen, man, check out his other books because Dr. Lynn he's been putting in some work. Now he has 6 other books already developed, one still in creation. You're going to want to head on over and pick up copies of all of them. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Dr. Lynn here on the line. You know, people, have any of you out there listening, and have you ever wondered what it truly means to unlock your fullest potential? And I mean fullest, I'm talking about emotionally, mentally, spiritually, everything in between. If you ever have wondered that, if you've ever pondered that question, this book and this discussion today, man, this is for you, because this is exactly what we have in store. Dr. Lynn's book bridges the gap between emotional intelligence and logical reasoning, guiding readers towards a life of profound self-awareness and purpose. We're going to dive into this transformative book that has these strategies that will help you shed your limitations, embrace your authentic self, and step into the person you were always meant to be. So trust me when I tell you, whether you're seeking clarity, growth, or even a deeper connection to your inner truth, this conversation is your first step towards a more awakened and empowered life. I'm telling you, man, sit back and strap in. This is gonna be a good one, and you're gonna love being a part of it. First and foremost, Dr. Lynn, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
Great.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Dr. Lynn, we are thoroughly looking forward to this discussion. What you've comprised here, man, is something special. It is magnificent. I think it's so special because, listen, man, you know, you're talking about things that are very deep. They're philosophical. They're complex, but you've articulated them in such a way that it really is seamless, right? And I believe it's going to be transferable to a lot of people. The basic message, when you really see the forest through the trees here, is all about love. It's about acceptance. It's about looking for each other. And listen, man, I mean, that's something that is in short supply nowadays, and it's something that we need a lot more of. So we're thoroughly looking forward to this discussion because I know we're going to benefit from this immensely. Now, first and foremost, let's start off at the foundation. Given your background, given your PhD, I'm curious, Dr. Lynn, what motivated you to delve into a journey of awakening?
Well, you could say the deeper part of it started in as I was finishing my coursework at UC Berkeley. I got to a position where my wife asked to divorce me, but in the context of 4 boys who were really quite young. And as I left Berkeley and got a teaching position at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, British Columbia, I started to experience a huge amount of pain. It wasn't so much about separating from her as it was losing the deep bond that I was growing with my 4 boys. And it just tore me up. For the next 2 years after I left Berkeley, I found myself crying myself to sleep every night, to the point where the people living next door one day called to me and said, "God, it's just so painful to hear you hurting so much." But it was out of that hurt that I felt a need to not only learn to release and get past it, but to discover the process that would be involved in doing that. And because I had already been exposed to these 2 teachers at Berkeley who were developing programs, they were realizing that to focus on left brain frontal cortex learning alone, which is conventional schooling, was missing out on the most creative side of our brain, which is right brain occipital cortex, the ability to see solutions and be creative. And so they were creating programs at that time, way back, computer programs to help kids learn to develop the more emotional right brain occipital cortex part of their intelligence. So that was just kind of an initiating beginning. And as I was going through the pain, there was a teacher of Ram Dass's, Baba Hari Das, who started to come to America and Vancouver. And he was a yogi teacher, an enlightened yoga person, who founded eventually the Mount Madonna Center in Santa Cruz. And the very first time I met him, he asked me to lie down beside him, and he wrote on a chalkboard instructions for me to be more present inside of my body and to learn to be in my hands and feet, to learn to be in my head, and to start being present inside and grounding my presence into Mother Earth. And then to do that through my whole body. He at the same time taught me, he said, in a class, he said, "Close your eyes and I want you to spend 5 minutes being totally in your left hand. Starting with the fingertips and the fingers, the thumb, working through each section, being in the palm. And after you spend 5 minutes really being present in the left hand, he asked us to compare it with the sensations in the right hand. And it's magical. The left hand starts to feel way more alive when you're present inside of it. And it starts to feel beyond body. It has a glow to it. You can actually feel the radiance of your left hand bigger than your right hand. And so these 2 things together, I started to realize that part of what I needed to do was learn to relax. And so I integrated this with studies in psychology about deep relaxation, and I began a practice of deep relaxation. And at the time, Baba Hari Das said, this is the most important pose in all of yoga because it teaches you to be really present inside of your body. And that's the whole point of doing the asanas, to learn to be more present in each edge as you're stretching it out, so that you become more and more present, and then that forms the key to meditation, the meditative process later as you develop your yoga. So then the other part of it was that I was feeling some need to open my emotional nervous system, which was feeling all this pain. So I started with some courses on Gestalt therapy, my sort of encounter group at the Esalen Institute. That's where it was, where this guy taught us hand awareness. And so I took a course in encounter group, and then I went on to primal scream. I began to get interested in how could I total body scream out how much I hurt so that I could let it go. And it was that had to do more with the emotional right brain occipital cortex part of our intelligence. Deep relaxation is sort of grounding in the central nervous system and the sensory part of our awareness system. And that's what the image of the book shows. To grow into higher states of consciousness requires us learning to integrate both halves of our brain into an integral, unified whole. And that's indeed at the time in the late 60s, there was more and more research coming out that people who learn to integrate into more whole brain states of awareness, they start to shift from discordant beta waves, where the two halves of the brain are in this conflict with each other. They're not coherent. But the more present a person learns to become in both halves of the nervous system, the brain waves start to integrate into integral alpha states. So both halves of the brain are waving together now. And beyond alpha, the more present you become, you start to go into theta and even conscious delta. Delta waves are what we enter when we fall asleep. In a sense, we go into higher states of consciousness when we're sleeping and we're dreaming. Our higher intelligence tries to help us with issues that are going on in our lives and give us clues. But so what we were discovering, exactly the image of the cover of the book, is that the way to become more whole nervous system integral conscious is to learn to be more present on both sides of our nervous system, not just our rational, logical left brain frontal cortex alone. And this requires us to make friends with our emotions. The emotional nervous system, a lot of people are not aware of this, but it's called the autonomic nervous system. And everybody is so focused on the central nervous system and the spinal cord in the center of our body, they're not taught that there are two cords outside of the central spine, which are the autonomic nervous system. And these two cords have ganglion, which reach out into core organ areas inside of our body, like our sensual sexual organs, like our lower belly sort of power to do things organs, like our solar plexus organs, which help us to have great food parties together, and the necessity of developing friendships to help create great foods together. Because we need a village to provide us with yummy foods, to share together. And then there's these in the Far East, it came to be known as chakras. Then there's the heart-lung center, in which we experience feelings of family, caring, loving. It's our hearts, the openness of our heart energies that allow us to feel that lovingness together. And then there's the eyes and ears and throat, plexi or chakra, which has to do with communication. It's through our eyes and ears and our ability to talk that we learn to communicate our understandings about life. And then there's the midbrain area of our, before you go out into the hemispheres. And the midbrain, what we're discovering, has the ability to start coordinating both halves of the brain into a more integral whole and actually open our awareness into our emotional nature much more deeply. And there's a local psychiatrist who used to live in Taos, Rick Strassman, who has written books and studied people using synthetic DMT, dimethyltryptophan, And what he discovered is that it seems to open the pineal gland or the third eye, which releases natural DMT, and it starts to help us to see more whole brain integral possibilities. And we also start to see the light energy at the root of everything through the opening of our third eye. And then finally, there's all hemispheres, frontal, left brain, occipital, and right brain. And part of what we're discovering about the importance of the occipital cortex is that it's what allows us to have vision, to see solutions, holistic solutions. I would like to say that the evolution of democracy itself emerged out of people seeing forward more happy ways of living here together as a unified human woman most kind. I like to, hue means higher. Man, woman, in a sense, the left brain frontal cortex has been associated with a more masculine view of the world, and right brain occipital cortex has been associated with a more feminine. So when we integrate all hemispheres together, it's what allows us to see holistic, loving, caring solutions forward here. So this is, as I deepened my journey, and it included going to an ashram in India where this particular teacher was brilliant at integrating the importance of emotional learning along with awareness opening. And so before long, it was also where I was first introduced to Vipassana meditation. And people like to refer to Vipassana as VIP asana. And Vipassana is where you agree to sit for 10 days from waking up 5 o'clock in the morning, you sit for an hour, do walking meditation for half an hour, sit for an hour, walking meditation. And you do that except for breakfast, lunch, and dinner till 9+ at night. And you do that for 10 days in a row. And part of what happens when you agree to be present is that you start to dive into what's present for you. You start to dive into various kinds of body pains that are helping to block your emotions that you might be holding. And then you start to become more aware of whatever you're feeling in the moment. And you just agree to sit there and be the watcher, the observer, instead of the reactor, because you've agreed to not react. You just learn to be present and to open deeper and deeper. And so typically when you learn to be really present for 10 days, you come out of that with glowing, alive awareness. It's like your whole awareness field starts to notice that everything is radiating and glowing with light. Mm-hmm. Everything all around you. Part of what's beautiful about doing it in India is people notice that you're radiating, you're glowing. And so even the beggars in the street bow to you, namaste, because they can see how beautiful, alive you become. As opposed to, in a sense, it has to do with the third inalienable right, the right to find happiness, which right now we're so stuck in left brain frontal cortex argumentation about reality that we forget that the real deeper intention of the founding fathers was for us to find happiness. So how do you find happiness?
People, once again, man, listen, this book is going to change some things for you. It's called Growing One's Inner Wisdom to the Max. It's available through Amazon, Google Books, and a whole host of other places. Head on over there, purchase your copies today, and get lost in this magnificent journey because I'm telling you, that's exactly what it's going to be for you. You know, a follow-up question that I want to go into now, Dr. Lynn, like so many things in science and also in the medical field, there's always a continuation, right? Where we're ever evolving and gaining further understanding of so many things. So I'm curious now, as we tie it back in, how does this relate to our continuing understanding of our nervous system? And how can it help open one's nervous system to the max?
Exactly, because this is part of what I was pointing to, is that, more and more people who are studying higher conscious states are realizing that our own nervous system within us is really the key. But it's about the whole nervous system, not keeping the two halves of our brain sort of separate from each other, and thus keeping ourselves separate from the same source of all which exists all around us. And so the whole idea that is pointed to in this book is, and some of the early images show that if you learn to be more present in your central nervous system, which has sensory endings, in every striated muscle ending in your body has a sensory cell. Mm-hmm. And when you're present in that cell inside of your body, that cell starts to come alive. It starts to awaken with life force, the first inalienable right. I don't want people to just be alive. I want them to be full of life force. So full of life force that they jump into every day going, hallelujah, another opportunity to celebrate being present. Okay? But then the other part of the nervous system is the emotional part, the more right brain occipital cortex. And what we know about the autonomic nervous system and its ganglion connections to our internal muscle groups is that it's these internal muscle groups that actually call out to us for fulfillment. I mean, everybody knows about the urge for sensual fulfillment, right? Mm-hmm. People know how great it is to have great friends, to have something to do in life that you love so much that it creates a living for you, and to have a family. I mean, there's so much emphasis towards how does one have a great family? Well, and each of these first four chakras, what we're finding is really the only way that you can find fulfillment is to get beyond fear and to open from your heart. Many people know that endless sex by itself is not fulfilling. The only time it gets fulfilling is when you find your heart able to open in relation to making love with somebody. Mm. And you could say it's the same thing with respect to a job, a way of making a living. But unfortunately, we become so left brain, frontal cortex focused about making a living that instead of putting the emphasis on doing something that is your inner gift to love to do something, we put it on making money. So many people are becoming millionaires, billionaires, hating what they do, but they think they're great, They think they're happy because they got so much money. Mm-hmm. And what do we know about spending money is, yes, it can give you like a 2 to 5, maybe 10-minute rush every time you buy something. But a new car becomes old by the next day. And so the material world in itself isn't sufficient. It's the joy of doing something you love to do that makes the difference. And the same with best friends and a loving family. But, when it comes to communication, so many people communicate from hate and resentment and blame, from the lowest end of our emotional nervous system. Part of what we discovered about studying our emotional nervous system as people have gotten interested is basically we have a primitive mode called the sympathetic side of our nervous system. The primitive mode is designed to help us survive in the face of real survival threat, and it triggers adrenaline and fight or flight. We either stand up and fight somebody, blame them, hate them, resent them, or we run away and hide and depress ourselves and pretend, oh, you weren't bothered, and just try to chill yourself out of having any feelings. But there is what's known as the parasympathetic side of our emotional nervous system. And the word parasympathetic is very interesting in itself because para means above sympathy. Mm-hmm. When we trigger sympathy, it implies that we need help. We need to stand up and fight, or we need to run away and hide. That's our only choice. But when the parasympathetic side opens, and it releases acetylcholines rather than adrenaline, acetylcholines immediately help us to ground and relax with whatever we're feeling. Imagine hating something, but being so relaxed with it that you wouldn't lash out. You would just communicate what bothers you without harming or hurting, without making something else responsible for your feeling. So this is what growing up involves on the emotional side. Learning to shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic. And Charles Tart, a psychologist who wrote a book years ago on altered states of consciousness, he has one chapter in which he discusses learning to shift into parasympathetic. And he said part of what happens when we're sympathetic, our focus goes narrow band, problem focused. I got problems, man. Oh, I gotta stand up and fight. Or I gotta run away. Right? Whereas in the parasympathetic side, when we learn to relax and just be more present with our feelings, and to open to them and be the watcher on the hill, the witness, the larger beyond body self that is capable of just observing us having feelings, we go wideband. In an article, he points out that research shows that our vision goes wideband, and we start to pick up details all around us. We actually start to allow way more bits of information into our whole brain per moment. And it's like, in a sense, you could say we get stoned. We get a natural high from being present. And that natural high helps us to integrate the information we're picking up, including the information coming from our feelings. And it helps us to open the third eye, open the occipital cortex, and start getting solution-focused. Solution-focused. Dig it. Instead of being problem-focused all day long. Stress, anxiety, unhappy, damn, life is tough. It's a shit pile. You start to go, wow, I've actually been gifted with the intelligence to create solutions to everything. And of course, the more deeply we open the emotional side of our nervous system, the more deeply we start to open our hearts. And it's our hearts, that's what my image on the front cover tries to show. When we go into alpha, theta, and delta wave states, and maybe even high amplitude beta wave states, which Dr. Joe Dispenza has shown happens when we're really present, we start to get brilliant. We start to come up with brilliant solutions that start to come from the heart. Imagine our current left brain frontal cortex, endless argumenters, my way or the highway, so-called leftist politics or rightist politics. And remember, any yin-yang division is always shown to be part of a hologram, a whole. And what we're starting to add to the center of the yin-yang symbol is the heart. The heart is the only way we can, together, as human, most kind beings, begin to create the kind of solutions that will orient towards not just liberty, but happiness for everyone. Imagine a democracy, a new wave form of democracy that would start to focus towards supporting happiness for everyone. Happiness for everyone. Solutions from the heart, which would include the left and the right coming together to find the best sort of solutions that would be good for everyone. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about the great liberation, not just the liberation which gives you the freedom to be either or, left or right. The great liberation is you start to understand that any left brain frontal cortex abstraction out of the grand whole that we all live in, that's all around us all the time, any abstraction is nothing but an abstraction. And the minute you go with one kind of either left or right side abstraction, it automatically implies the opposite. Any thesis that we generate in our left brain frontal cortex alone automatically implies an antithesis. And the only way to create ever holistically loving, kind solutions is from the heart. And that's what all the great mystic traditions have attempted to show. In my new book, I have my second chapter. It points to how mystic traditions the world over have always had a symbol to show the centrality of the heart in all consciousness explorations. In many traditions in the yoga tradition, they talked about a lower triangle of energy ganglion in the emotional nervous system and an upper triangle. And when we bring those two triangles together over the heart, and we bring them through each other, the upper triangle, we take consciousness down, we bring the lower central sexual chakras up, and we integrate them totally within the heart. We create a symbol which, was known as the Star of David. In the yoga tradition, Baba Haridas, my teacher, pointed out how the Om symbol is actually a representation of the integration of the lower chakras and the higher chakras in the heart. And certainly in the Christ tradition, Jesus, the Christ conscious one, tried to say, please love thy neighbor as thyself, because you are not separate. Ultimately, you are not separate from your neighbor. You are a part of the great mystery of one at one. When me and my Father are as one, it is if I am in heaven.
People, listen, I could sit here, I could talk to him for hours, man. As you can already tell, there is a mountain of information, and I promise you we've barely scratched the surface. There is still so much more left. So one last time, we're here on the line with Dr. Lynn Sereda. We're discussing his book, Growing One's Inner Wisdom to the Max. Remember, there are 6 other books, one still in creation. You gotta head on over to Amazon, Google Books, and a whole lot of other places. Type it into a search bar and you're gonna be greeted with all of them. And I'm telling you, these are books that are going to help you move mountains and you're gonna wanna be a part of it. And if you're like me, man, you're hooked. You're heading on over there already and getting ready to purchase your copies because you understand how valuable these books actually are and what they can do for you and for your life. Dr. Lynn, this has been a true pleasure, an absolute delight, man. I really do mean this. Thank you for comprising these amazing books. Thank you for sharing such wonderful words of wisdom. But most importantly, thank you for being here with us as a guest to discuss it all through people of distinction.
Thank you for having me.